Good evening, warriors of the week. Today we are here for another exciting episode of In the Zone, episode 7. And today I got a chance to sit down with our upline, with our mentor, Dato Sri Vijayeswaran, and ask him a very important question where most of the network is always asking: how do you sustain and build leadership during hard times? And today we get to hear it from Dato Sri himself. Good evening, Dato Sri.
Good evening.
Obviously, the key in becoming a success in network marketing is to build leaders. Now, the network has always been asking these questions: how do we sustain and build leaders during difficult or hard times?
Well, obviously during good times, leaders are always going to be flocking to you. So, leaders are basically a lot like family. I have always looked upon leadership as a family being built. So, in essence, during the good time, that's probably the time that you have the opportunity to instill certain things, First of all, when we talk about love, loyalty, service, these three things are things that are easier assimilated during good times. When you try to preach it during the tougher times, they are just too busy surviving to try and assimilate all of this. But during the good times, you have an opportunity to reach them. Just like children who are growing up in your own home, your family, it is your best hope of reaching them before they get to 12 or 15. By the time they are at 12, you're already losing them. Now, the same thing happens to every leader at some point. When they first come in, they are very open. They are ready to receive. They are actually, full of enthusiasm. That is the moment where you actually can penetrate the most. Sadly, what we do during good times is we tend to celebrate with them more. My own approach towards leadership training is to be exceptionally hard during the good times. It's the bad times that they need the actual rah-rah sessions. They need to see the smile. They need to see the actual, so-called support systems kicking in. Standing behind them and giving. But during the good times, that's probably at the beginning of every relationship, you have the best opportunity to go as deep as you can. I mean, even to speak of our own relationship right now, sir, you're busy. You're out there, you're working, you're networking, you're doing this, that, and the other, and you have to kind of balance all of that to find time to spend with me. Whereas in the early days, it was at a drop of a hat.
Every day.
Now, what we were able to achieve in the early days is what's carrying you now. So if you want to talk about bad times per se, or tough times per se, we talk about, the good times. And the good times tend to be also very much at the beginning of every relationship. So like building a family, you have to do it stage by stage. So you have to have actually in your mind a step process where you are going to be saying, I'm going to be building love and loyalty and service. I'm going to be building it, in a step fashion where I'm going to penetrate as deep as I can. And that's the opportunity that you will get to go as deep and as hard as you can. Rhythm, which is the first part of it, is raising yourself. Rhythm also can only be penetrated at the beginning. People tend to be more idealistic at the very beginning. They're open, they're willing to listen to your concepts, your ideas and everything. And you need to actually get them at that point to argue, to discuss and argue and open up and say whatever they want to say. Because if they don't do it at the beginning, they'll never do it later on. It must come into a habit for them to discuss and argue and challenge you. And you raise these principles up at the beginning and say, why are these principles not, important to you? They need to be important to you. And at some point, whether or not they actually start practicing it, they need to understand it first. Are you with me? So you see, at that moment, you can get them to be more humble, like say, in terms of service per se. You can get them to do things that they might find a little bit more difficult once success comes in. Now, in terms of bad times, how do you preserve them in bad time? The simplest thing is to understand that whether it is a good time or whether it is a bad time, the ultimate relationship between you and them has to be one that is based on honesty. So people will go through tough times with you. They will actually, be able to take it, whatever challenges are thrown at us, they are able to take it as long as you're honest with them. Like in every relationship, and they will stand by your side. So you build the loyalty through the tough times, but you build the love and the service through the good times. And this is basically a pattern that I have observed and worked upon over the years.
So that was in a nutshell, build your leaders in good times, and in difficult times they will be staying with you.
Yes, you start the building in the good times. You be hard in the good times. You lead in the good times. By the time you come to the tougher, more difficult periods of your life, you will be by their side. So you basically stand by them, behind them, and push them through. But during the good times, you have to pull them. And that is the difference.
Firstly, going back to what you said just now, even though we spend a lot of time with leaders, building them during good times and being with them during bad times, but many of them still drop out and quit. What would be the main reason for that? Is it lack of success?
See, ultimately, you cannot change anyone. Their own path in life, their own projection in life is already there. Leadership is about, getting them to do the best that they can do at any given moment. Some of them are going to leave anyway. We have our position on, some stay, some don't, etc. and so on. And those that leave will leave, and some will come back even. But the important thing is to recognize that during that period they are with you, that you are building them to the best of your ability. Now, what will happen inevitably is that there are those that, somehow don't become successful despite everything that you do. And just like children in that regard, if you have kids, you'll recognize some don't have to be pushed. They just are A students all the way through. And the other hand, you have students and you have children where you have to sit by their side and you have to just slog it out with them. They are late bloomers in life. There are people who bloom late. There are people who bloom instantly when they meet you. And all of this are things that are outside of your control. Are you with me? But what is in your control? What is in your control is to give them the fullest benefit of your experience and knowledge. And when they see that you are actually that sincere in what you do, they see that you are that honest in what you do, and that sincere, and that you really care, it evokes a response in them. Loyalty comes from simply a reciprocal feeling. Reciprocal means it has to come from you first. They see the loyalty from you to them, and they will find within them a reciprocal feeling, which is, okay, he has been loyal to me despite all of my shortcomings. I have to do something back. Then again, not everyone is going to be wildly successful. Some people are steady plodders. And sometimes some of our most successful leaders are people who took their own time getting there. And so be it. You don't want everyone to be wildly successful. In fact, it's always a challenge when you have someone who's instantly successful, because the person then believes that you had very little to do with it. And then you have a more difficult problem of getting through to them. Now, when they are plodding along with you and every success is a hard-earned victory, everything is a small increment of growth, that's also a good thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Then you are able to guide them a lot more. And remember, it's a journey is two ways. It's not just about them, it's also about you. Every time you go through tough, downlines, every time you go through tough students, so to speak, you are growing. In every defeat that you face with someone who walks away, that doesn't mean anything has been lost. Just because they walk away means that you have another lesson learned. Now the question is whether you're going to repeat that lesson or you're going to learn from it. So there's your own growth to look into in this matter. It's not just about them. So you've got to keep on applying everything that you have learned till you get better and better at it. There is no shortcuts in this path. the more you try to find a shortcut, the more you end up getting short-circuited. The longer road is a little slower maybe, but it's always more sure. So in terms of people being successful and people leaving you, in terms of your control outside of that line, there's a line between you, what you can do and what you cannot do. Stick to that, understand that, and do the best you can do. The world changes as you change.
Many leaders, they say that I have failed because my downline did not become successful. What would you say to that?
Well, you see, the thing is, what is wrong with that failure? There's nothing wrong with that failure. Yes, clearly somebody failed. There's a failure means there's a failure on both parts. Your part is to acknowledge your failure. Your part is to recognize, okay, there are some things I could have done better, that I needed to have done better. Why did I not do it? And then try to analyze and change. But that whole aspect has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with you. And failure is a very necessary step, because failure is your best teacher. There is no better master than your failure, because it teaches you lessons in a most painful way. Embrace your failure. Embrace your failure. Welcome your failures. There is nothing that shortens you, reduces you, makes you any less of a person because you failed. You failed. So you have to fail so many more times. In fact, the more often you fail, the better. The important thing is, and get up again. Get up again. Repeatedly get up again. If you look at the star players in any field, basketball, if you ask Michael Jordan, yes, the man scored the most number of, points in his career than anybody else. But at the same time, he also had the most number of tries and the most number of failures. So failures are necessary. Why not fail? Are you with me?